Good morning, everyone. It's September the 26th, 2021, and the title of the lesson is A Narrow Gate. We're going to be in the Gospel of Matthew, the 7th chapter, 1 through 14. Before we get into our lesson for today, would anyone in the class, of course I have to venture with that, would they want to venture out, remembering your high school English classes, and give us a definition of a hyperbole? Well, I've got to be honest with you. I had forgotten what a hyperbole was, and maybe you had too. A hyperbole is an exaggerated statement not meant to be taken literally. Yeah, I'm going to repeat that. It is when you make an exaggerated statement not meant to be taken literally. Folks, the Bible is full of hyperbole in both the Old and the New Testament. Oh, really? Really, Wallace? Well, I'm going to give you some examples. The psalmist talked about the fields and woods clapping their hands. Another, if your eye offends you, jab it out of its sockets. Well, obviously, that's an exaggerated statement. It's not to be taken literally. I could name you several others, and in today's lesson, we're going to see. Let me tell you a few here that we've got. In Luke, the 9th chapter, the 25th verse, he said, "What good is it for a man to gain the whole world and yet lose or forfeit his very self?" Well, a man can't gain the whole world. 2 Chronicles, King Solomon made silver and gold as common in Jerusalem as stones. And of course, Solomon was very wealthy, but he wasn't so wealthy that he had more silver and gold. There were stones in the whole city of Jerusalem. Obviously, it is not true. It's an exaggerated statement. The 12th chapter of John said this in the 19th verse. "So the Pharisees said to one another, 'See, this is getting us nowhere. Look how the whole world has gone after this man Jesus.'" A good example of how envy and jealousy can cloud the mind. Class, Jesus spoke many times using hyperbole, and in today's lesson, we're going to see it in use. Jesus is going to be talking to his disciples about the error in judgment. This coming passage continues in our study of the Sermon on the Mount, of his emphasis on right relationships that will help you and help me on our behavior. I am going to read our scripture in its entirety today, and then we'll break it down as we proceed with our lesson. Matthew, the 7th chapter, 1 through 14. 14 verses. This is good. It's long. "Do not judge, so that you may not be judged. For with the judgment you make, you will be judged, and the measure you give will be the measure you get. Why do you see the speck in your neighbor's eye, but do not notice the log in your own eye? Or how can you say to your neighbor, 'Let me take the speck out of your eye,' while the log is still in your own eye? You hypocrite! First take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your neighbor's eye." A lot of hyperbole there, right, folks? "Do not give what is holy to a dog, and do not throw your pearls before swine, or they will trample them underfoot and turn and maul you. Ask, and it will be given you. Search, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be open for you. For everyone who asks receives, and everyone who searches finds, and for everyone who knocks, the door will be open. Is there anyone among you who, if a child asks for bread, will give a stone? Or if a child asks for a fish, will give a snake? Jesus is using the example there, folks, of the bread and the fish, because those two are the main staples of food in Jerusalem. They didn't have Kroger grocery stores and all of these fine grocery stores where we can get a wide variety. They had bread and fish, which was the main staple. So he says, is there anyone among you, if a child asks for bread, will give a stone? Or if a child asks for fish, will give a snake? If you then, who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good things to those who ask him? In everything, do unto others as you would have them do for you. Of course, that's the golden rule. For this is the law and the law of the prophets. Enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the road is easy that leads to destruction, and there are many who take it. For the gate is narrow and the road is hard that leads to life, and there are few who find it. Jesus was using words and ideas which were quite familiar to the Jews. Rabbis constantly warn people about judging others. Good Orthodox Jews had 6 great works which would bring a Jew credit in this world and profit in the world hereafter. Of the 6, here they are. Study, 1. Secondly, visiting the sick. 3rd, hospitality. 4th, devotion and prayer. 5, the education of their children in the laws. And 6, thinking the best of other people. You know, I think of our class and the wonderful people that are in our class and the wonderful people that are in our church. And I looked at all 5 of all 6 of those wonderful laws, and our class and our church, excuse me, we do all of that. I think it's wonderful. Jesus knew, and Jesus knows, that living up to all the commands in the Sermon on the Mount is impossible. It simply cannot be done. But maybe it can raise our level of consciousness to our shortcomings. Class, throughout the ages, many fine, talented men and women have been criticized as mediocre and untalented, and yet have overcome that criticism and ascended to greatness. In spite of all the bad reviews they got, they have become champions. I'll give you an example. A wealthy lady back in Victorian days engaged the services of a young Australian soprano to sing at one of her soirees. After she had sung, the hostess exclaimed, "What an appalling voice! She ought to be muzzled and allowed to never sing again." The young singer was Nellie Melba, acclaimed by later critics as the greatest soprano of the 19th century. So when you and I hastily judge people, it can backfire on us. Remember, folks, when you point one finger at someone, you have 3 fingers pointed right back at you. Don't you love the humor in verses 3 and 4? This is hyperbole at its best. 2 brothers. One has a tiny speck in his eye, and his critical, narrow-minded brother cannot even comprehend that he has a log in his eye. The humor is pretty obvious. So what does Jesus say? You hypocrite. You hypocrite. Jesus calls him a hypocrite. Now let's look again back at verses 7 through 11. Ask, and it will be given you. Search, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be open for you. For everyone who asks receives, and everyone who searches finds. And for everyone who knocks, the door will be open. Is there anyone among you who, if your child asks for bread, will give a stone? Or if the child asks for a fish, will give a snake? If you then, who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? As I said, Jesus used bread and fish here because they were the everyday staples of life in Galilee. Verse 7 says, ask, and it will be given to you. Wait a minute, Wallace. Many times I have asked for something and prayed over it day and night, and it wasn't given to me. That, my children, is exactly what drives a lot of immature Christians away from the church, and also a lot of non-Christians vowing to never have anything to do with Christianity. I asked for it, and I did not get it. That's the attitude. Let me give you an example of several years ago. Mary Lou and I were members of another church, and I had taken a little sabbatical from teaching, and I was in the classroom with my 8 very good friends, and the teacher was very good, and he said, folks, I want us to pray for my brother. He's not a Christian. We haven't been able to get him to even come to church. He won't come to church. He won't expose himself. And we worry about him because he is just having a real hard time. And we prayed for that boy many times. Now, I sang in the choir. And so when you sing in the choir, you can look out and you can see everything going on in the church. One Sunday, we saw this young man come walking down the church aisles. We had the altar call, and he came to join the church. He joined the church, and we were all so happy for him. Everybody knew that, the situation. The next Sunday, he was there. He came. The next Sunday, he was there. And on the third Sunday, we saw him there. The fourth Sunday, he wasn't there. And I thought, well, maybe he's out of town. The next Sunday, he was not there again, and we did not see him. So we were searching for answers for this fellow. And I would ask you the question, why do you think this fellow did not come back to the church? Some of the answers that we probably could derive at that is the fact that he thought instant things would happen. As soon as he joined the church, the things he asked for would all be given to him, and all of the problems that he had would all be solved immediately because he was now a member of the church. Well, folks, you and I know that that is not true. So many times, bad things happen to good people. We are all examples of that. We've all had sorrow in our houses. We've had deaths in our families. We've had all kind of problems, you name it. And just because we're Christians, that doesn't mean that we'll never have any problems. It does mean that we can better contend with them generally when we are Christians. But I think I coined a phrase many years ago as I was teaching these classes. I think people like that have the rainbow syndrome. They think a rainbow is going to descend down over their house and they will never have any problems anymore. And when they do, they're disappointed with God. God will always answer our prayers. But children, that's exactly, that attitude is exactly what drives a lot of immature Christians away from the church, and also a lot of non-Christians vowing to never have anything to do with Christianity. I asked for it, and I did not get it. There's a lesson there, folks. God will always answer our prayers, but He will answer them in His way, and His way is the way of perfect wisdom and perfect love. Now let's look at Matthew 7:12 through 14. In everything, do to others as you would have them do unto you. Of course, that's the golden rule. In everything, do to others as you would have them do unto you. For this is the law and the law of the prophets. Enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the road is easy that leads to destruction, and there are many who take that wide gate. It's easy to travel, they can take it, but it leads to destruction. For the gate is narrow and the road is hard that leads to life, and there are few who find it. They take the wide road. It's the easiest one. You can see it. I love what Yogi Berra used to say. If you come to a fork in the road, take it. If you come to a fork in the road, take it. He really had the humor. But the gate that you and I have taken is the narrow gate. And that road is hard sometimes, but it does lead to life, and there are few who find it. Dr. Barclay pointed out that in every action of life, we are confronted with a choice. We can never evade the choice because we can never stand still. We must always take one way or the other, the narrow road or the wide road. Class, you and I must remember that Jesus' Sermon on the Mount begins by pronouncing blessings on those who have nothing to claim for themselves. The brokenhearted, the mourning and the loss of a loved one, the humbled and the hungry. This teaches you and teaches me that the only way to enter God's kingdom is to let Jesus do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. And that closes our lesson for today. Let's close in a prayer. Dear good and gracious God, help us to be ever mindful of how we are to treat others, not only here in our church, but everywhere we congregate with everyone. Help us to remember that when we point one finger at someone, we have three more pointing at us. We love you, dear Lord. Amen.